Hi, my name is Abigail Salisbury. I'm a solo practitioner attorney in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh. And my practice is called Salisbury Legal. I work mostly with nonprofit organizations. I do also some small business work. And I've been asked today to talk about starting a nonprofit. So I did a video once before and posted it on how to do the actual steps of starting a nonprofit. So what you need to do in terms of legal filings and things like that. So that's not what I'm going to talk about in this video. What I'm going to talk about here is what you actually need to do or to have or to be prepared to do or that sort of thing in order to start a nonprofit. And I find that a lot of people don't really think this through so much. They don't think that part through. They just think through, well, I need to file with the state. I need to file with the federal government. I need to have some forms. I need to do this or that or pay for this or that. They don't really stop and think, what do I need to have in place? What do I need to be doing? So that's what I've put together today. Put together about 10 things here that are frequently overlooked when people are starting a nonprofit. A lot of times, to be honest, once I explain to people what's involved in starting and running a nonprofit, they don't want to do it anymore. So the first thing that I have is which you need to start a nonprofit. The first thing is money. And this is going to sound a little bit crass, but it's true. If you don't have the money to start a nonprofit, you don't have the money to run the nonprofit. Now, this can be a little bit tricky because people often say, well, I want to fundraise the money to start the nonprofit, but you can't necessarily fundraise until you've actually started the nonprofit. So it's kind of a catch-22 there. Sometimes people will get a group together, everybody puts in, a couple $100. That's one way of gauging commitment from your board, which we'll talk about later. But, if you are not able to finance it yourself, then, get a group of people together. And if people are committed enough to it that they're going to serve for several years on a board, they should also be committed enough to put in a few $100s to start the organization. So one thing that you do need in order to get started is, like I said, money. Even if you don't use an attorney, you're going to be looking at hundreds of dollars just for the filing fees and publication fees alone. So just be aware that bare minimum you're going to need that much. Then what are you going to do when you need to buy a domain and have a website put together and maybe you want to run Facebook ads, since we're on Facebook right now. Maybe you want to run Facebook ads or, do other programming or something. What are you going to do with no money? So, it doesn't sound great and people don't want to think about that. They just want to, think about starting a nonprofit in order to raise the money to do things, but you do need money to get started. And number two is you need to have a concrete understanding of your purpose. I see a lot of people post on Facebook or other forms of social media, and they say, hey, I have a nonprofit. Side note, you don't have a nonprofit. There's a post about that on my blog. You don't own a nonprofit. But people say, hey, I have a nonprofit. Does anybody know of anything that needs doing in the community? No. You have not started an effective nonprofit. You need to have a concrete understanding of why you are doing this. It is going to be difficult at times. It's going to be sometimes expensive. It's going to test your nerves, your faith. I deal with a lot of faith-based organizations, and things can be extremely trying. If you don't have a guiding purpose to keep you going through that time, you don't have enough to really take you through. If you just started an organization because you have a vague sense that you want to help people, you should just go and volunteer for somebody else. You don't need to be running a whole organization if you just want to help out with street cleanups or, do something charitable. Just go and work with another person's organization. Part of understanding that purpose is that you need to know if anybody else is doing what you're planning to do. So if you have an idea that you want to, save an endangered animal that lives just in your area, something like that, You go through the whole process of starting up an organization. You recruit a board, you get your federal designation, you're trying to fundraise. Then somebody says, hey, doesn't that other organization do that same thing? You're going to feel foolish and you're going to look foolish, and you're going to have wasted a lot of time and money. So you need to do your research and make sure that you aren't duplicating efforts. Now, sometimes there are reasons that you can do certain things more than once. There's more than one organization that raises money for breast cancer, for example. Some issues are big enough, or if it's a regional organization, something like that, where there's one in California but not one in Pennsylvania. I think that sometimes there can be valid reasons for having some duplication of effort. But if you're a small organization and there's another small organization down the street, just go and volunteer for them. You don't need to start your own organization to do that. So you need to make sure that you understand the actual environment around you, because you're going to have to raise money and you don't want to try to be raising money from the same population that the other organization is raising money from. Accordingly, the third thing is you actually need the knowledge and the ability to fulfill that purpose. So once you've identified your purpose, you need to understand whether or not you have the knowledge and the ability to actually go through with it and do it. So for example, if you are wanting to start some sort of legal aid organization that's going to help people with their legal problems, you don't want to start that if you are not a lawyer, maybe, or if you think that you can recruit other people to come in and help you who are lawyers. That's all things to take into consideration. But it's really important to make sure that you have the knowledge and the ability to do it. If you don't understand enough about running a nonprofit, you need to do your research, you need to think that through. You need to figure out whether you have the actual ability to carry this out. A lot of people start organizations and they really don't have enough knowledge of what they're doing in order to make a difference. I've seen people who've never been to a country try to raise money for that country and start an organization to do that, and it's not sensible, really. You may have the best of intentions, but you're best off volunteering for somebody else's organization, because they'll have the subject matter knowledge and the ability to carry out those efforts. If you've never left the country, don't say that you're going to go and save some other country. You just don't seem to have the knowledge and ability. Doesn't mean that you can't acquire that knowledge and ability, but it just means you need to set that as a task for yourself and do that before you actually start running an organization. Number 4 is you need to have an understanding of the community that you're going into. If you are trying to start an organization in a community that you're not a part of, that nowadays can turn out poorly for you. People are sometimes coming from an outside environment and they think that they know how to fix everybody's problems, and if only these people knew what you know, they would be able to live their lives better. So, maybe if you have lived your entire life in an urban environment and you've only known extreme wealth, maybe don't just roll on into a tiny town in rural America and tell them how you're going to save them from all of their problems and fix everything in their town. Make sure that you have an understanding of what's actually going on there. If you have to spend some time in a community for a few months before you actually do anything, that's fine. People often want to race right into setting up an organization, and you don't need to do that. I mean, for the vast majority of issues, time is not of the essence. If you want to do some long-range, long-term work that's going to have durable impact in a community, you need to understand that community. You need to be accepted in it. You need to have buy-in from whoever the community leaders and stakeholders are there, and they need to see that you have empathy for them and that you understand them. Also, you should recruit board members from the community that you intend to serve, so that you just aren't showing up and saying, hey, I'm here to tell you how everything is going to be better if you just listen to me, or do this program that I've given you, or something like that. You need to have buy-in. You need to have relatability with the community. They need to know you, they need to accept you, and you need to make your organization representative of the community that it serves. And then that's, the next issue that I want to talk about is if you want to do a good job, like I was saying, if you want to have durable impact, you need to understand what that looks like. So number 5 is, what does success look like? What is success? A lot of people start an organization and they say, I want to save, the fuzzy kitties or whatever, and they don't really think about what success looks like. Does success look like getting all of the stray cats in your community adopted into homes? Is it a trap, neuter, release program? What is success? What's success for you? And that's going to be different for every organization. One organization's success looks like another organization's failure or mediocre achievement. But it's going to be up to your board while you're doing this pre-planning process to sit down and really map out what success looks like. Because if you're just starting from 0 and going forward, it can be really hard to figure out what steps you need to take in order to do well. But if you figure out what success looks like, where your goalpost is, it's a lot easier to map a path back to the beginning and figure out all the conditions that are required in order to create that successful end condition. So what you want to do is think about the goal and then think about everything that has to be in place in order for that goal to occur, or in order for your success to occur. And map that backwards, and that will help you figure out what it is that you need to do. Otherwise, you're just sort of flailing blindly. You don't necessarily know what your goal is, or where you're going, or how you're going to get there. Then the next issue is number 6, you need a board of directors. People often come to me and they essentially want to be the dictator for life of an organization. And it didn't work out well for Julius Caesar, and it just doesn't work out well in nonprofits either. There's no such thing as, or there should, okay, I won't say there's no such thing, because there are organizations that are not run correctly and they do have dictators for life. But I will say there should be no such thing as someone who's a dictator for life. So you need a board of directors, and you need them to be a functional board of directors. You can't just pick, a handful of random people, the first people you run into on the street when you walk out of my office, and say, oh, there's my board of directors, all done. She told me I needed 5 people to sit on my board. So, poof, here you go. I have their names and addresses done. No. You need to really think about what you want in your board. So these are people who are going to have to come to meetings, most likely monthly. Are they dependable? I have a certain kind of person that I call a Jenny Joiner, where, it's sort of like they say, Golden Globes or Emmys or whatever. It's an honor just to be nominated, and they're just excited that you asked them to participate in the organization. And they don't really have any super big commitment to it, but hey, it sounds exciting right now, and whatever is newest is exciting for them, and they do want to do it, and it sounds fantastic. So you're going to lose them in about 2-3 months, and you'll never hear from them again. So you want to pick people who are reliable, dependable, people who follow through on what they say that they're going to do. You want to make sure that you pick people who have actual skills. Don't just pick people to, fill chairs. You want to figure out what you're going to need. So if you have a really teeny organization and you need to have a working board of directors because you don't have any staff, you need to figure out, what skills do we need? Do we need somebody who's really good at technology? Maybe they can, build our website or do our social media or something. We need somebody who's like amazing at project management to keep us on track. Whatever your particular organization is, you need to go and figure out what you need. Do you need somebody who's a cheerleader who keeps everybody going? Do you need somebody who is one of those people where everybody in the community knows them and they know everybody? So they're a fantastic connector, and They can really build a lot of bridges for you. There's a ton of roles, but think through the roles first and then go find people to fill those roles. Don't go find people and then try to stuff them into roles that they're not able to do. Also, something I recommend is calendaring your board meetings for the entire year so that people can plan ahead. Don't send people an email the day before the board meeting or something and expect them to attend. You really need to have a consistent drumbeat of those meetings throughout the year, so get those set up. I often tell people that before you even have your organization legally structured, start holding board meetings, because you're going to find out who's a Jenny joiner and who's actually committed to it. So make sure that you're focused on actually, act as if. Pretend that your organization is up and running and have those board meetings and figure out who's going to be reliable and who's going to do the work. And you'll know, because I don't want to send paperwork to the IRS and then you come back to me and say every last one of those board members quit. So I want you to have a functional board before I ever send anything to any governmental body. The next thing, number 7, is that you need a budget. This often blows people's minds because they say, well, how am I supposed to know how much money I'm going to bring in? I haven't even started the organization yet. Well, some of it's guessing, to be honest with you, but you have to look at a realistic guess. Figure out what other organizations are doing. You can pull 990s off the internet. You can talk to other people in the community. Nonprofit community folks are, incredibly sharing. They are very willing to talk to you about what's reasonable. People will share resources. It's actually a very lovely sector to be associated with because of that. People don't hoard knowledge, in my experience. People are generally happy to talk. So if you sit down and try to build a budget, and it may not work out, okay? But part of the reason that you need that is that you have to fill out a different form depending on how much money you bring in. So if you're going to bring in less than $50,000 a year on average over your first 3 years, and you have a good faith belief in that, you can qualify for an easy filing track that's going to make it cheaper and faster for you to get your determination letter from the IRS. If you aren't going to be under that $50,000 mark, or if you're going to start certain kinds of organizations, you're going to have to do a long form. If you're under $5,000 a year in revenue, well, there's a whole separate situation that we can talk about. But for most of my clients, $50,000 is a lot of money to put together when you're starting an organization from scratch. If you're lucky enough to be able to put together that much money, that's wonderful. But most people are not able to get up and over that hurdle in the first couple of years. So you need to have an actual budget. Then if you are starting an organization and you're going to be over that $50,000, you need to have a really good projected budget, because you have to turn it into the IRS for evaluation. That goes along hand in hand with point 8, which is a fundraising strategy and some method of accounting. Don't just start a nonprofit and hope that money will fall from the sky. A lot of people think that a 501c3 designation is a golden ticket and that money will just arrive somehow in large stacks. And that's not true. You have to work very hard to get money the majority of the time. It's a lot of work. It's why professional fundraisers exist. It's hard. So you need to figure out what your fundraising strategy is. Where are you going to get that money? Who are your targeted donors? Do you have certain people who you think will probably commit to give money? Talk to them. Find out if they really will. Do a viability test to see if your organization really will work or not. I see a lot of people have pie in the sky ideas where they say, oh, I know a bunch of rich doctors and they'll definitely give me tons of money. Maybe not. So, do a reality check to make sure that that's a realistic goal for you. If you have a real fundraising strategy that isn't just based on money falling from the sky, then once you have the organization in place and you have your status, you can go after those folks and start executing on that strategy. So I see a lot of people talking about putting together, even for small businesses, they talk about putting together business plans and all this. All the planning in the world is useless unless you actually execute on it. So once you have that fundraising strategy, you're going to have to actually execute on it, which means you're going to have to ask people for money. And it's really hard. Americans are not used to talking about money. It's kind of a taboo subject. Also, the majority of the nonprofit sector is female, and we're often conditioned to not, ask people for money. It's just how it is. And so a lot of people, I have to coach them through really figuring out how is it that you ask someone for money. It's very hard. It's one of the hardest things that people have to do. I would say the board and actually asking for money are probably the two hardest things that people have to do. So part of that, again, is the accounting issue. Do not commingle the organization's funds with your money. Nope. Don't make loans to people. Don't take loans from board members and things. Don't do any of that. So make sure that you have an accounting system that's going to keep things organized, maybe a financial policy. You need to know basic stuff, right? Like just who's going to be able to sign checks, who's going to set up the bank account, any of that sort of stuff. But you also need to have some sort of accounting system, whether it's QuickBooks that's tied into your bank account, whatever you set up, but it has to be a real accounting system that you can have records and look at later. Number 9 is commitment, and that's commitment to do the work in the long run. I see a lot of people who are very fired up when they first start the organization. They can't wait to get going. They're after me to find out how long it's going to take to get that status and when they can get everything done. They just want to hurry, hurry, hurry. What's the fastest route to get it done? But then their excitement kind of fizzles out after a while because they can't maintain that level of excitement. I'd rather see somebody who's at a slow burn than somebody who's a big blazing inferno, because that's going to burn itself out. So you need to understand that this is going to be something for years. Okay, I have clients that these organizations started in the 1880s, 1890s, and they're still going today. And obviously they don't have the original founder or board of directors, but it's a nonprofit can outlive its founder, and so you have to understand succession planning. You have to have the commitment to be in it for the long haul and understand that you're not always going to be in control. You have to have commitment that the mission is bigger than yourself, that the organization is put in front of your own interests. You need to have that in your mind, understanding that that's what it's going to be. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You might be doing this for the next 20 years, not the next 20 months, okay? Some people can't even last the 20 months, they lose interest. Number 10, 2 issues that you really need to handle, 2 things that you need to have going into starting a nonprofit organization are integrity and ethics. People don't really ever think about these. They don't think about that because it's not as fundamental as money, right? Like money is easier to think about. How much money do I need? But integrity and ethics are incredibly key, because there's no nice way to say this, but nonprofit sector is very trusting. A lot of people like to believe that because they're in it for a cause, everybody else is too. But I see a lot of embezzlement. You'd be shocked. I see a lot of people who've engaged in financial misconduct. I see organizations that have just played fast and loose with their finances. And you really need to maintain an unwavering concept of ethics and integrity, because otherwise it's very easy for people to get sidelined. There are sometimes opportunities will present themselves to board members or to executive directors or something, and you need to know your values and have strong values and ethics in order to make sure that you make the right decisions. You need to constantly be questioning, not just what am I doing and how does it feel, but how does it look to other people? Sometimes that's even more important. How does it look from the outside? You may be doing nothing wrong, but it looks questionable. And sometimes the way that it looks is more important than the way that you're actually doing things, So always think about what you're doing, but also how it looks with every decision that you make. I always tell people, if you wouldn't want to see it in the newspaper or on, a Google search or on social media or anything like that, don't do it. If you'd be embarrassed to have people know that you did something, don't do it. But you also need to know you have to watch other people's integrity and ethics as well, because they are not always going to make decisions that you would agree with. And it's okay if people do something different from what you would do, but it's not okay if they're doing something that's self-serving or self-dealing or harmful to the organization in order to help themselves. There are people out there who will use organizations to line their own pockets, and you need to have the integrity to speak up, question what they're doing, and point it out if it's wrong. You need to have a whistleblower policy in place so that people know what to do if they see wrongdoing. But you just really need to know, what your values are, because you don't want to be pulled astray. It's super critical that, going back to knowing what your purpose and your mission are, if you are not able to know what your values and integrity and ethics and have all those things put together, if you don't have that, it's really easy to get pulled off to the side. People have mission creep because they see money, they see a grant opportunity that has almost nothing to do with really the purpose of their organization, but they chase that money. So the next thing the organization's got money, doing what it was really intending to do. So you want to just always make sure, keep constantly evaluating yourself and evaluate your board going on, having to do self-evaluations and 360 evaluations and that sort of thing. So those are my 10 things. Just to recap, you're going to, if you have any questions, please obviously ask a question and I'll address that. But just do a quick recap for folks who weren't on the live stream at the beginning. The big points that I have of what you need to have in place in order to start a nonprofit, in fact, a nonprofit, I should say, is you need to have the money to be able to do it. You need to have a strong understanding of your purpose, your organization's purpose. You need to have the knowledge and the ability to actually do what you want to be doing. You need to have an understanding of the community that you're going into. Don't just show up with no knowledge of the local community and tell them how it is. You need to know what does success look like for your organization, and that's a conversation to have as a group with your board. You need to have a board of directors, and not just any old board of directors, but one that functions. Is organized and going to be there for you. You need to have a budget. You need to have a fundraising strategy associated with some method of accounting. You need to have the commitment to go through with this and do the work in the long haul, because it's a long haul. And you need to have the integrity and ethics in place in order to conduct oversight appropriately, not just over the organization, but really over yourself as well. So those are my 10 points, and I'm not seeing any questions from folks on the slide here. I'm just looking over to see if there are any questions coming up. So if there aren't any questions, I think I'll go ahead and sign off. But you're absolutely welcome to reach out to me. My website is www.asalisbury.org. That's www.asalisbury.org. And I would certainly be happy to, help anybody with these issues, because, I hate to see, I don't ever want to set up an organization that is not going to be functional. I don't ever want to set up an organization and have it fall apart. I don't ever want to set up an organization and have the board leave you stranded. I just don't want it to fail. I want every organization that I set up, I genuinely want it to succeed, and I try to coach people on some of these issues, and some people listen and some people don't. But I think that there are issues that people don't get addressed, don't have addressed for them, because in a legal context, people really only think about what are the filings that I have to have in place, what are the fees that I have to do, what are my legal obligations, what happens if the IRS audits us, that sort of thing. There's so much more to it. It's an incredibly deep and rich subject. So there's always more to learn, and I'm really thankful that people took the opportunity to watch this video. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and otherwise I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks.